Welcome everyone for judgment. Somebody commented on one of my videos and told me Naturally, the person who messaged me was right that I needed to cover this and do a video on it, so I am. Everyone's favorite hero, President Zelensky, met with everyone's favorite religious figure, the Pope. You know, two really great guys that can be trusted who are doing great humanitarian things for the world. Met together. Now, their meeting isn't a surprise because, well, we know all these people meet, and they obviously meet because they want to talk about how we can make the world a better place, not control the world or make the world worse, of course. And it was interesting to note that Vladimir brought a present to the Pope. Now, I know a lot of people are going to comment, and they're going to say, well, that's a Catholic painting, and it's Mary worship. Take all that stuff aside and just look at the messaging that they're sending, and just look how dumbed down Christians are who worship and look at the Pope as if he is some type of anointed person from God when he's not. And of course, we know all the other things that the Pope has discussed, which can't discuss here, of course, which are discussed on the website recently about people that we need to love and care about. I won't get into that, but look at this clip and, well, you'll notice, and we'll talk about it, what Vladimir gave to the Pope.
Great honor. Yeah. Вітаю вас.
Ringrazio questa visita.
Che ha salvato la vita a un guerriero ucraini. Nello stesso tempo
Це медаль на пам'ять про 10-ту річницю понтифікату.
So Vlad, who obviously, as we've heard over the last few months, he's been pretty much persecuting Christians and shutting down churches and arresting Christians over in Ukraine, but we don't talk about that here in America because, again, the same thing is pretty much happening here in America, just not as boldly, or at least not as boldly as they like to claim. Now, we know a lot of Christians have been silenced. We know Christians are being portrayed in the media as horrible people. But Vlad did that, and then on top of it, he gives to the Pope a painting where you'd think the Pope would be a little bit offended, especially since he's Catholic, so he loves this type of stuff. You think he'd be offended by the fact that you have Mary, what's depicting, image depicting Mary, supposedly holding baby Jesus. And where's baby Jesus? Well, he's blurred out. He's removed from the painting. So you'd think maybe the Pope would say, what is this? And he'd get offended and maybe even smash the painting, right? Take out of it the false idols and the images and all that stuff, and just look at it from the perspective of disrespect to Jesus Christ. But no, of course not. We're not supposed to take anything out of this. Of course, this is how bold they've gotten. This is how bold even the Pope has gotten, where they actually are showing us these things. Like, you would think in private, obviously, that things like this would be hanging all around the homes of the Pope and Zelensky and Biden and all these politicians, right? Because we know that they despise Jesus Christ and they despise Christians. But no, this is out in public, and there's still going to be Christians who defend the Pope, defend Zelensky, and of course, love Ukraine, right? So here's the painting, the image, which has generated a wave of criticism on social networks, and many users expressed their displease, their hatred of the gift. One user said the gift Zelensky gave to the Pope, regardless of your faith, every Christian who supports this man supports this offensive icon. I agree with that. The meeting between President Zelensky and the Pope lasted approximately 40 minutes. They discussed the humanitarian and political situation in Ukraine amid the ongoing war. Of course, that's what they discussed. And nobody, I mean, you think, he's a sitting duck, right? Zelensky, he's targeted by Putin and all this stuff that we hear. He's really out in the open. I mean, Where's the next place we're going to see him, right? On the 50-yard line at the Super Bowl, waving to everyone, doing the coin toss? Probably, wouldn't surprise me. The meeting, again, with Pope Francis and Zelensky, when they united, gave one another gifts. Francis gave Zelensky a bronze sculpture depicting an olive branch, which symbolizes peace. The Holy Father then gifted Zelensky with the 2019 document on human fraternity from World Peace and Living Together. He probably really gave him just an extra copy of Agenda 2030 in case he had lost his, or, maybe it was just an autographed copy from the Pope of Agenda 2030, right? That makes more sense. Pope Francis' final gifts consisted of Statio Orbis of March 27, 2020, and a volume titled An Encycla of Peace in Ukraine. Whatever that means. President Zelensky's gifts to the Pope start a little bit of controversy. You think a little bit of controversy? I mean, again, we've already heard all this stuff about what's happened to the churches in Ukraine and the oppression that's happening against Christians over there. Well, you'd think maybe the Pope would be offended even by seeing Zelensky out, in public, right? He would have to keep a low profile because he'd say, well, people might catch on because we've heard all this stuff in America about what's happening with the churches over there and the silencing of the church. Just so the Pope would have to play a role and say, oh, I can't meet with him. I don't agree with that stuff. No, they don't need to hide this stuff anymore because nobody's brains are functioning. Nobody's thinking and saying, wait a minute. He just gave him a picture of Mary with a blanked out version of Jesus in the picture, pretty much saying Jesus is void, non-existent. And you think the Pope might be mad? Oh, no. Get back on your phone, everybody. Just get back on your phone. Put a little bit more of that honey in your hive mind there. So another gift consisted of a painting entitled Loss, which denounces killing children and more. It depicts the Virgin Mary holding a dark figure which replaces the Christ child, which is Jesus Christ. I'm just reading it from this article. The image generated a wave of criticism on social media networks. I read you what the one user said. Another user said, icon that Zelensky gave to Pope Francis in Ukraine, the image of Mary holding javelins or Saint Javelina has become popular. Most Christians would consider it blasphemous. Another person said, from prosecuting the Orthodox Church at home to gifting blasphemous icons, Zelensky has truly shown his disdain for Christianity. Yeah, but where are the Christians? Right? I mean, I know everybody listens to my channel, including me, of course. I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea. I mean, I actually, every week, I get a fresh Ukrainian flag and put it on my mailbox. Yep. I even have it tattooed on my lower back. It's a bullseye on my lower back. Yep, exactly. I'm sure all of you do too. You have Ukraine shirts, everybody? And I'm sure if you have Twitter, you have the Ukraine flag next to your name. Just want to make sure that's clear in case, the algo's listening. You know what I mean? You can never be too careful of that algo. The guy's always lurking that thing. So again, nobody needs to be offended. No Christians need to point this out, right? Nobody needs to say, what is going on in this world? Why are the churches not speaking out? Where are when I see churches trending or people, are like, hey, have you seen this church? And I know people are into the churches that sing and do all this stuff. I don't know what I'm even looking at. Everyone's just thrilled and they're singing. It's great to sing praise to Christ, of course. But they're singing and they've got guitars and they're having a great time, and all the men are dressed like Metro, and they're all, wearing tight clothing, following the social trends. And I don't ever hear them talk about any of this stuff that I discuss, at least. I'm not a minister. I'm not saying that, that this is a church or anything like that, because it's not. But why don't people ever discuss this stuff? How come all these people just ignore these types of things? Right? Jesus is constantly being mocked in our society. World leaders are mocking Christ. How about after the event that happened in Tennessee at the school? Well, we're not going to go into who was really behind it and that stuff. How about that? Wouldn't that be considered a hate crime in this society where all we're told about is hate crimes, hate words, hate speech? How come? Oh, that was ignored, right? Biden, all these guys just constantly mocking Christianity, talking about how Christians are extremists, all this stuff. But the churches out there just want to talk about lollipops and cupcakes. That's what they want to talk about. They don't want to talk about what's actually happening right now in front of us because I guess it's too stressful for people to look at. But when you have world leaders on a world stage, including the person who's supposed to represent Christianity, now we all know what the Pope really is, but the majority of the zombie Christians out there actually worship the Pope and actually look up to the Pope. And when the Pope comes to town, they're all out there crying in the streets like absolute lunatics. And you'd think people would say, wait a minute. Zelensky, the person that we're supposed to be giving all our tax money to and we're supposed to be worshiping, who's the Time Life Man of the Year, is handing a picture that couldn't be more blasphemous, depicting Mary with a blank child because, it would be Jesus Christ in the painting, but he's removed Jesus Christ. He's personally gone out of his way to make sure he's giving this to the Pope, the figure of Christianity, supposedly, and nobody says boo. The Pope accepts it. He loves it. It's an olive branch for the Pope. And nobody still is suspicious of the Pope, Zelensky, Biden, or the world government. Pretty amazing, right? The churches continue to be sound asleep. I'm not saying that every church is. I'm not saying that what I do is better than church, because it's not. I'm just saying I don't hear anyone discuss these types of things when they're right in front of us. Because we could rally the church. We could rally Christians who have Christ in their heart, who are passionate about Christ. Who don't, when they see things like this, their blood boils. My blood's boiling seeing that right in front of my face. The mocking of our king, right? But not the Pope. He doesn't seem bothered by it. But again, we put the Pope on a pedestal, of course. The Pope who's accepting of all things, which we can't discuss here on YouTube, which you all understand. But anyway, I thought I'd share that with you, right? Again, prayers for Ukraine, hashtag love wins, hashtag Zelensky hero. You know all this stuff, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, come on. Give me a break. I thank you for being here. Unbelievable, folks. God bless you and your families.